Hello friends, my name is Dr. John WorldPeace JD. JD stands for Doctor of Jurisprudence. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a ex-lawyer, if you will. I've been Dr. John WorldPeace for 29 years. I changed my name April 1st, 1988. I'm an advocate for peace, but I'm not a pacifist. But what I want to talk to you about today is Donald Trump. And the reason I'm making a video is because a lot of you know that I've been posting pretty regularly since the Donald Trump campaign began. And honestly, I haven't had anything good to say about him. Today, I posted about his comments about a senator who said he had gone to Vietnam and he was in the reserves and didn't go to Vietnam. But it irritated me that Donald Trump, after demeaning Senator McCain's time as POW in Vietnam, and Donald Trump being a draft dodger, he was as physically fit as anybody else. I'm sick and tired of him making negative comments and disparaging veterans, all the way back to the Muslim incident right at the beginning of the campaign. Donald Trump doesn't like Muslims, he doesn't like Mexicans, he doesn't like anybody of color, he doesn't like anybody that's poor, he doesn't like anybody that's sick, he doesn't like anybody except himself. He thinks that he's on TV, he thinks that he's still on The Apprentice. He hadn't gotten it. He thinks that his job is being as outrageous as possible. His job is to stir things up every single day. But I'm sick and tired of him banging veterans. You know, Clinton and Obama, who are Democrats and I was promoting, neither had any military experience. That's okay. But personally, I think if you want to run for president, you really ought to show people that you care about this country and you ought to do your time in the service. For Donald Trump, I'm not a fake veteran. Back in the late 60s, you were going to Vietnam if you didn't go to college. And I chose in 1966 that I wanted a college education before I went into the military. In 69, I was going to graduate in 1970. Somewhere in early 69, 68, I applied for the Air National Guard in Houston, Texas, which is a unit that George Bush was in at that time. And I got a call to come down and sign up. And it was a dream of many guys that I knew to get in the Air National Guard. But I decided I didn't want to be a weekend warrior. My fathers and uncles were military, Army, and served in Germany and Korea. My dad did. And so I wanted to go and be a full-time soldier. After I decided not to go into the Air National Guard, I signed up for Marine Corps OCS and was accepted. Signed the papers. I was on the hook Sometime in March of 1970, I got a letter from the Marines that I was discharged, the reason being that the nature of the Marines had changed and they only wanted engineers for OCS, so I was given a discharge. My draft number was 2. I graduated from college in August of 1970. I volunteered for the draft, and on October the 12th, I was in Fort Polk, Louisiana, where they were sending 2,000 guys a week to Vietnam. 3 days after I arrived at Fort Polk, I got a call from the Marine Corps. They said they had a place for me in the March 71 OCS class in Quantico, and they wanted me to discharge from the Army and sit around for 6 months and wait to go off to Marine Corps OCS. Anybody that was in that situation back then knows how crazy it was. You couldn't get a job because you were going to be drafted, and it was nonsense, and I'd already been living with that in a sense, but I didn't. It was time for me to get on with my life. I was in the Army, so that's where I was going to be. Sometime in November of 1970, I volunteered to go to NCO school in Fort Benning, and I was accepted to that. I was going to Vietnam as an infantry private in March, going to NCO school, and Fort Benning would push that back until September of 1970. So for 11 months I was trained in the infantry to go to Vietnam. When I got the call, or got the orders for the receiving station in Fort Dix, I walked in there and I saw a map of Europe, not a map of Vietnam. I went to Italy. I served in the Southern European Task Force, which were the NATO forces that Americans were part of. And I stayed there until May of '72. And I got a 5-month early out, which Nixon was giving to lots of people. I didn't apply for it. It was just a wholesale cutting down of the military. My dad was in World War II. The war ended when he was in boot camp. He was sent to Korea. He repatriated the Koreans coming back from China after escaping there from the Japanese. I have 3 sons that served between the 2 Iraq wars. In the Marine Corps, I have a grandson that served in Afghanistan as an interrogator. I have great uncles that one served in the Marine Corps in Guantanamo in 1920s. I had an uncle on my dad's side that was in World War I. He was there in France fighting. My lineage goes all the way back to the American Revolution. And I also had a grandfather that was a surgeon in the Confederacy. And I don't care how much of history that is trying to be rewritten now about the Confederacy. The fact is that he answered the call. He did his service. Donald Trump is anti-veterans. He hires generals to help him, but everybody else, they mean nothing to him. It was just something he would say to get the votes. But he doesn't care about veterans. He doesn't have anything good to say about veterans, and I'm sick and tired of it. I'm especially sick and tired of it because he's a draft dodger. Like I say, I know that Obama and Clinton didn't serve in the military, but they were never disparaging of the military like Donald Trump. It's incredible. We have a man in the White House who is nothing but an egomaniac, He doesn't like poor people. He doesn't like people of color. He doesn't like non-Christians. He doesn't like people that don't have a lot of money. He doesn't care about the planet. He doesn't understand that he's there to represent the people, not himself. He's profiteering off of the office of presidency, and nobody is pushing back hard enough against him. I would like to see, and I feel we ought to have some significant gatherings, maybe not like the civil rights in the Vietnam protests of the 60s, but we ought to see more anger. And I did begin to see today in my postings anger. People are fed up. The man is down to a 36% approval rating. They're sick of Donald Trump. It's not going to change. He's nothing. He is the worst excuse for a president that could possibly be elected. He's an alt-righter. He's a fascist. He's not my president. At any rate, I wanted to introduce myself. I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like that he's trying to disenfranchise 20 million people from health care. I don't really like anything that he's done. And he really hasn't done much. For the great deal maker, he really hadn't done much. But I'm definitely sick of him knocking veterans, men and women that have served their country, old and young. And he has contempt. I don't see any tweets today or the other day or any day about the Marines that were lost. Nothing about that. Everything is about Donald Trump. I'm sick of it. I'm on the bandwagon. I'm leading the parade. I've got the flag. It's time to get rid of this pariah. We've seen what he can do. He can do nothing. He is nothing. It's time to dump Trump now. Thank you for your consideration.